Good morning. This is Erica Dingman from the Lower Manhattan Project. This morning we're speaking with Dr. Fraad Wolff. Dr. Wolff is Senior Economist for Barrel Consulting. Good morning, Max. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
And thank you very much for doing this with us this morning. We'll get right to the questions. Global economy is undergoing a radical shift, and governments have been positioned to take a controlling interest in numerous firms. Regulation of financial markets is now the focus. Do you see this having a long-term effect on energy and the environment?
Absolutely. Anything that changes the way and the availability and the cost that firms borrow money and do business with each other will deeply affect the way that firms in the energy space do business with each other, how much exploration they do, which new technologies are more or less advanced, which new technologies are promoted, in addition to which the cost of the financial crisis and the way we've responded to it thus far changes the government's availability to fund all kinds of things and undertake many and diverse sets of actions, given the financial constraints that various governments will operate under in the future, and none will be more constrained than ours as a result of the way we've chosen and the cost related to the way we've chosen to respond to our financial crisis. So there will be no corner of the economy, let alone the essential areas of energy, energy and emissions, and energy policy that will be somehow untouched by this large and imposing hand of the crisis that sort of traces a rather coarse path across many business plans and industries.
So then, if you could do one thing right now to help deal with the uncertain future with respect to energy and the environment and the economy, what would it be?
Well, I think a cogent economic plan will have a side benefit of really beginning to rationalize and set up priorities for the energy space and the environmental space. I do think that a national plan with both midterm, short-term, and long-term targets for carbon outputs and quantities of alternative energy supply is much needed, and it will give us a roadmap, even if we have to make detours and changes to it, about how to apportion various government monies and how to plan for a future. Part of the problem we've had in the past is we've heard a lot of discussions about bold new long-term energy futures, but we haven't built the bridge on how to get there. And therefore, when our interests wane or are pulled onto other topics for reasons good and bad, we tend to desert grand plans, and then a few years later in the next crisis, we tend to start from scratch. And that's a poor way for anyone to plan their life. It's a poor way for a business to plan, if not impossible. And it's a fairly poor way for a government to plan a long-term structural shift in one of the most basic things in the entire economy, which is how we power our electric grid, our automobiles, our transport system, and our everyday lives of production and consumption.
So that gets us to the 2009 stimulus package. The package allocates $128.2 billion towards renewable energy resources and energy conservation. 14 billion of that has been allocated towards tax credits for wind energy facilities through 2012, and through 2013 other renewable facilities will receive part of the stimulus package. At what point do you think we will start to see the effects of the stimulus bill?
Well, I think we're already beginning to see the effects of the stimulus bill. It's going to be hard because the stimulus bill and the effects of the stimulus bill that we'll see aren't exactly what was promised in the rhetoric of the American political debate, but are more likely closer to what the economics discussion of them was, which is that the stimulus bill was an expensive and major undertaking in order to do three things. Reassure the general public. I think we've seen some benefit from that already. To reduce the depth of the decline and to reduce the duration of the decline. The problem with reducing the depth and duration of the decline, even though it's a very bold and worthwhile undertaking, is that it's hard to know, because the only way you'd know how well we reduced the depth and the duration of the decline would be to know how deep we would have gone and how long we would have stayed there absent the stimulus package. There's been a little bit of a sort of over-promise on the stimulus, which was the idea or the notion and the wish and belief that the stimulus would somehow allow us to snap back to growth and success very rapidly. That's not going to come. But we do see a new set of priorities in the stimulus bill, including a much greater discussion of and a greater willingness to spend federal funds toward alternative energy. I would say that the 128 billion number gets bandied about quite a lot. If one unpacks that and takes a look just at what is actual energy and alternative energy spending, it's a number much smaller, somewhere on the order of maybe 20% of that headline grabbing figure. But that's still large. It's still much more than we've seen often in the past. And it's still a good move forward. What I'd like to see, though, is concrete plans and long-term spending toward those concrete plans, because I don't really think that a helter-skelter, sometimes funded, sometimes unfunded, partially governmental, partially international, partially domestic corporate is going to be enough to move as far as the various climate challenges and energy price and security issues suggest we should need to move in the next relatively short time frame for structural economic change, let's say 10 to 20 years. So those seem like long time frames in American politics and many people's lives. But in terms of changing an underlying structure of a huge $14 trillion macro economy, 10 or 20 years is actually a blink of an eye. And so you do really need to have a plan, and you do really need to stick to it. You need to have a certain amount of bipartisan shared minimum criteria agreements, and those then need to be put into an effective binding international set of agreements which have both sanctions for failure and rewards for success.
Right. So then do you think that possibly another bill that is more directly focused on energy and environment is worth considering?
Yeah, we will see another stimulus bill, almost for sure. And in that second stimulus, and possibly third, we will probably see further and slightly different discussions of energy. There is a bit of a risk, which tends to occur all the time when we have the situation, which is the amount of heat and interest in alternative energy tends to be highest in the United States when political unrest in the Middle East or another major oil supply region or country is at an apex, and it isn't right now, although of course that could be different tomorrow. And it also tends to be at its highest when gas and oil prices and natural gas prices are at their highest, therefore pushing people to be willing on a price basis, as opposed just to a policy basis, to explore alternatives that they might have been nervous about or disinterested in. We are not at particularly poignant moments of high price in gas, oil, and natural gas, although long-term averages were above some of the long-term averages. We're not at the peak that we might have seen, say, if we were talking in November of 2008, when we would have seen real panic on those prices. So that does dissuade some of the attention from energy. And energy is going to have to compete with many other valuable social issues in a context of a government here which is overspent and a public which is politically and some sort of philosophically nervous about the extent of growing government intervention in the economy.
Right. Max, your answers are very insightful and very much appreciate it. And,
well, I just read what you gave me. I mean, I have no idea what any of it means.
Oh, I think you know what it means.
I have the person whose house I'm busy here today actually cleaning is holding a cue card for me, and I'm worried that I'm going to lose the job later.
Your sense of humor is always with you, Max. We love you for it. But thank you very much for talking with us today. I very much appreciate it, and I hope you have a fabulous day.